Moto Master X5. Oh yeah.
Hello YouTube, Motormaster X5 here. Today we're going to talk about the gorilla Harambe, that whole incident that happened with the child who somehow got into the enclosure, and my whole thoughts on that. And we can get into a little discussion here. But basically, I guess the gist of it is, I'm sure everyone already knows. I mean, it's not really a new story at this point. The kid wanted to see the gorilla more closely and got into the enclosure with the gorilla, got hurt falling into the enclosure, and then the zookeepers made a snap decision and decided to put the gorilla down to save the kid's life. Now, I don't know if that's necessarily was necessarily the correct decision, but I would think that they would know the best. I mean, just look at it this way. The gorilla is not a person. It's a wild animal, as much as we like to, relate to them because they are primates. They are very similar to us in a lot of ways. It's still a wild animal, and a gorilla is very, very strong. Now, the gorilla may have seemed to be helping the kid out, or, I don't know the full story, but from what it seemed like the gorilla was kind of helping the kid, and then the zookeepers decided that the best decision was to put him down because, you don't know if the gorilla is going to completely change his demeanor, which could easily happen as far as I know. I think that's the way it is with most animals. You can't really predict them. I mean, there's a reason why we keep them in an enclosure, which we won't get into the whole ethics of keeping primates in an enclosure, or even zoos for that matter. That's a whole nother discussion, whether or not I think that's morally right or not. But continuing on, the zookeepers would know the nature of that animal way more than any armchair warriors out there who watch the news and go, oh no, that gorilla was helping the kid. Why did they shoot him? He was clearly helping the kid. You don't really know. And the zookeepers would know better whether or not the gorilla was, temperamental, if he had a history of mood swings or whatnot. They would know best, and even if the gorilla didn't have a history of that, like I was saying before, it's a wild animal. Or not a wild animal, but an animal. You don't really know what they're thinking or what's going through his head. I mean, the gorilla was probably just as afraid as the kid. All the people were yelling at it. When animals are afraid, they do strange things. You can't predict their behavior. I mean, people do the same thing. If people are afraid, they don't really think clearly. So, do I think the zookeepers made the right decision? I feel like they made the best decision that they could, knowing what they knew. And I don't think there's really any other way they could have gone about it, unfortunately. I mean, they could have tried the tranquilizer. I hear that all the time. But, as other people have said, the tranquilizer, it's not like the movies where you get hit by a tranquilizer dart and, you're out, you're just knocked out. It's going to take some time. The animal's going to get hit. He's still going to be conscious, probably agitated because someone just freaking shot him with a tranquilizer. I know I'd be pretty pissed off if I got hit by a dart when I was just chilling, hanging out with a little kid or something, just get hit by a tranquilizer dart. I'd be pretty pissed. Especially a big animal like that, he's not going down right away. Now, I don't know the details on how long it would take, whether it would take 10 seconds or 5 minutes. I don't know. I'm not a zoologist. I'm not an expert in this sort of thing. But I do know that the gorilla would still be up and about and probably pissed off. Now, would you want your kid next to a pissed off gorilla? No, I know I sure would. I don't have a kid, but I mean, I wouldn't want anybody to have to be next to a pissed off gorilla after he just got shot by a tranquilizer dart. So, there's that whole thing. But yeah, that's basically my thoughts on it. I feel like with the information I know, the information the zookeepers knew, they probably did what they thought was best. Or I know they did what they thought was best. I mean, they cared about the gorilla too. It's not like they didn't. They were taking care of that gorilla for years. I mean, I don't know how long that gorilla was in the zoo for. But I think that gorilla was 18 years old, if I'm correct. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I believe he was 18, and it wouldn't surprise me if he was in captivity for all that time. Whether or not he was in the zoo for that whole time, I don't know, in that one zoo, but I could definitely see that as being the case. And I'm sure the zookeepers had an attachment with him, and they would not have made that decision unless they had to. Ambulance up ahead. Hope everyone's alright. Well, people are trying to like blame the parents, and I don't think there's any video of what actually happened, how the kid got separated from the parents, how the kid got into the enclosure. I don't know. I don't think anyone really fully knows. But can you really fully blame them? I mean, can you really keep a 100% eye on your kid all the time? I mean, anyone who's been around kids knows how fast they get into trouble. You can turn your back on them for 5 seconds and they're out of sight. You don't know where the hell they are. You know, kids are agile. The kid could have climbed that fence in about probably 2 seconds flat if he wanted to get over there. So I don't think it's right to necessarily blame the kid's parents and hold them liable for this, unless there was obvious like negligence, like they were holding them over the fence, holding the kid over the fence when he fell in, or they freaking went and got a beer or something while the kid was just chilling there by the enclosure. But by the sounds of it, the parents were right there, and they may have turned their back on their kid for a moment, and the kid jumped the fence. Now, like I said, we don't really know the details of what happened, at least I don't. But I don't think it's right to blame the parents in this case. Because people are always looking for someone to blame, someone to point the finger at, you know. It's human nature. We always want someone to blame. It's unfortunate, but it's just how we are. But I don't think, like I said, I really don't think the parents are at fault here. I could be wrong, but I don't think the parents are really to blame. And then people are trying to blame the zoo, saying their enclosure should be better, they should have higher fences, yada yada yada. But you can only really do so much. I feel like if they've never had this issue at the zoo before, with people getting into the enclosure, it's not really an issue with the zoo or with their fences. I mean, you can only do so much, right? Like if someone takes maybe an apples to oranges example here, but if someone takes a car and then crashes it into a tree, you can't blame the car manufacturer for not having safeties against people crashing them into trees. I mean, if someone does it, then they either weren't paying attention or the roads were slippery or something. But it's kind of the same with the zoo. If they put fences up and they put all the security and someone just climbs over the fence, it's not really the zoo's fault. They did all they could really do in that case. I mean, what are they going to do? Pay people to stand around the fence all day and just make sure no one's trying to climb them? But yeah, I don't think there's really anyone we can blame in this circumstance. It's a shitty circumstance. That's what it comes down to. Overall, we don't really know what would have happened. No one really knows if, you know, the quote-unquote right choice was made. But I do believe that the zookeepers did what they thought was best. I know I'm sounding like a broken record at this point. That's why I'm going to cut this video short. Stop this video in a minute. Yeah, so I mean, feel free to leave your comments or thoughts on this whole Harambe issue in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I mean, I don't know the full story. For all I know, the gorilla was asleep when they shot him. I mean, I'm pretty sure he wasn't. They wouldn't have bothered then, but yeah, so see you later, YouTube, and as always, have a good day. Adios.